Hello and welcome to the Living Your Best Life webinar series presented by the Huntsman World Senior Games. This is a monthly webinar that covers a wide variety of topics that are designed to help you live your best life. My name is Kyle Case, and I have the distinct pleasure of serving as the Chief Executive Officer of the Huntsman World Senior Games. Now, we're going to get to our expert presenters, and we're very excited for the expertise that they're going to share with us. First of all, we want to welcome Dr. Becca Jordrey, who is a professor of physical therapy at the University of South Dakota. She earned her Doctor of Physical Therapy degree from Duke University. Dr. Jordrey is board certified in geriatric physical therapy and is a certified exercise expert for aging adults. In 2009, she created the Senior Athlete Fitness Exam, or SAFE for short, for the South Dakota Senior Games, and SAFE was adopted by the National Senior Games Association in 2011. Also joining us, Dr. Wendy Viviers is a clinician and adjunct professor for multiple Doctor of Physical Therapy programs, where she instructs on the older athlete. Originally from South Africa, she earned her BS degree in psychology and physiotherapy from the University of Witwatersrand and a sports physiotherapy specialization degree from the University of Cape Town. Welcome, both Becca and Wendy. We're glad that you could join us today.
Thanks for having us, Kyle.
So, Wendy, did I say Witwatersrand correctly?
I had a good chuckle here because South Africa would probably be throwing something, but now it is Witwatersrand.
Yeah, I wasn't even close. My apologies.
It's okay. I'll forgive you for now. That's good.
My apologies. But we're so excited to have you guys joining us. And just a couple of weeks ago, about 3 weeks ago, we were together in Fort Lauderdale, Florida at the National Senior Games. I'm wondering how things went there. Did you get a chance to visit with a lot of athletes and go through the SAFE program?
We did. Many. We threatened many. I even brought my pen with me. I told anybody who doesn't do our exercises, I'm going to stab them with my red pen when we get to Huntsman Games and Senior Games next year. So it was a great experience. 12 days of many athletes. Felt a bit like Groundhog Day at times, but it was a
I am sure that you guys were busy. As we looked around the corner at where you guys were working, our booth was just right around the corner, and we saw just a steady flow of people coming in and learning more about where they're at physically. And I know that we're going to get into some of that today. But again, we're excited to have you with us. Looking forward to the information that you have to share. And really, without any further ado, I'm going to turn the time over to both Becca and Wendy, who are going to present some amazing information.
All right, so Wendy's going to put our slides up here. We did just get back from Fort Lauderdale. I guess it feels like we just got back. So we're recovering from the busyness of being there, and our needed dose of working with older athletes and brainstorming how we can help this population that Wendy and I both identify as members of as well. So our topic today is talking about being proactive with your health rather than reactive. Our healthcare system tends to be a very reactive healthcare system, and as we screen athletes and educate them, we really feel that there's an opportunity to be more proactive. So, okay, Wendy, we'll go to the next slide here. The thing I want to get across as we start is I really feel that our population of older athletes is misunderstood. And that's not necessarily always the fault of the healthcare providers that misunderstand you, but it's an element of a problem working with older athletes. So we don't see older athletes as typically as we do the general population of older adults. And so physicians often overlook issues that an older athlete might have because you're able to get up out of a chair, you're able to do your own grocery shopping and take care of your home. And they're not really thinking about your sport competition or your goals as an athlete or as a high functioning older adult. And so because of that misunderstanding, some of those goals are overlooked. And I think then ultimately what happens with older athletes is that we're an underserved population. So while we may not be a sick population, we're not getting the health care or the attention from healthcare providers or exercise experts maybe that we need. And so we're going to talk today a little bit about areas that we think we can address, or at least a little bit of an area that we can start addressing. Okay, Wendy. So as Kyle mentioned, the Senior Athlete Fitness Exam, if you haven't already heard about it, we call it the SAFE. This is a tool I created in 2009 in South Dakota for the South Dakota State Games, and it is a battery of tests that looks at 4 different areas of fitness: cardiovascular fitness, muscular fitness, that's the area that we're going to talk the most about today, flexibility fitness, and balance fitness. Okay. So I brought the SAFE to the National Senior Games in 2011 and started collecting data on older athletes at that time, and refining the SAFE. We just finished our 6th consecutive National Senior Games SAFE testing and have tested more than 3,000, almost 4,000 athletes with this tool. And what that has allowed us to do as physical therapist is to learn so much about older athletes, where your skill set is, where your strengths are, where we might be able to help elevate your performance and your health even further. You might notice that the SAFE is happening at your state level, or you might see it advertised at the senior games nationally and at state games. This is just a free service that we provide as physical therapists to older athletes. So we have done all of this testing as volunteers and really encourage athletes to go through the SAFE testing, not just once, but every chance they have to go through and see how their health is changing and how they're scoring on the different elements of the SAFE. And I'll go through those individually in just a bit. Okay. So the goals of the SAFE, the overarching goal is to make sure that we're addressing any kind of health care that an older athlete might be harboring. So at the very basic level, making sure that we're not missing any health risk factors that could be addressed that could impede their participation in the games. We want to make sure that everyone who wants to participate in sport as they get older can continue to participate. Beyond that, we want to make sure that we're preventing injury. So identifying areas where an injury could knock somebody out or make their sport less fun. And really our ultimate goal for success is to help older athletes perform at their best. So if we can make a few adjustments in someone's training or make them a little bit more aware of some aspect of their physical health that could help improve their performance, I think, none of us would be upset if we were winning more or performing better or enjoying how it felt to do our sport even more. And what I really hope doing as we to this information about older athletes is that we're sharing that information to our healthcare providers, who can then do a better job of treating you and helping you. Okay. All right, so I'm just going to walk quickly through the aspects of the SAFE, the different tests that we do. The first is cardiovascular fitness, and what we do here is measure athletes' blood pressure, heart rate, and oxygen saturation. And we know but we're looking for those extreme outliers, people with really low values or really high values that might indicate that something might be amiss systemically for them, and we've been able to pick up on some of those aspects and help athletes get the care that they need. Then in the cardiovascular station, our athletes have their waist and waist to hip ratio measured, and that's nobody's favorite part, but we know that carrying more weight around the middle section of our waist tells us more about our cardiovascular risk. We're more likely to be at risk of heart disease, more likely to be at risk of diabetes or other metabolic conditions. And we can address that in ways that we train. So making sure that we're getting, high intensity interval training rather than just a long, moderate walk or run for our cardiovascular exercise. If we can really attend to those, getting our heart rate pushed up into that high range where we're really stressed, but then allow it to come back down and recover before we push it back up again, we can make a difference in the cardiovascular fitness, in our own cardiovascular fitness as we get older. Okay, Wendy. Muscle fitness testing is our favorite section of the SAFE, and it's the one we're going to talk about today. So I won't get into too much detail on this slide, but our first test in muscle fitness is grip strength. And you might think, because we're testing how hard the hand can squeeze on this enhance, but what we're really interested in global strength for an athlete. The other two measures that we look at in muscular fitness relate more to muscle power. So this idea about how much mass we can move, how quickly we can move it through a distance. So we look at fast gait speed, and we have athletes walk as fast as they can without running. And then we look at 5 times sit to stand. So having someone stand and sit 5 times as fast as they can. And we'll show you a few videos. Okay. All right, and flexibility fitness testing. These elements are set up to really look at injury prevention. So if we're limited in our mobility for shoulder flexibility, for instance, how far we can flex up overhead, this becomes problematic for our overhead athletes, for our swimmers. And if we can maintain that or improve it, we can improve performance. We look at the foam pillow posture test, which relates closely to that shoulder flexibility and tells us if an athlete is starting to get too flexed in their posture. Ankle flexibility is important for an abundance of sports. So getting into the ready position for pickleball and tennis and other ball sports, really being able to utilize your lower extremities for fast walking, power walking, race walking, track, running, cycling, and then any sport that has to do with jumping. If we lose that ankle flexibility, then the problems that present up the chain in our body and start to create other issues that could cause injury or impair performance. And then finally, hip flexibility. We look at how open the front of the hip is. If we don't see that good hip flexibility, it's likely that an athlete's already starting to develop low back pain and might be more imbalanced when they're performing their sport as well. Okay. Finally, we look at balance fitness testing. These two tests are sometimes the bane of athletes as they go through the SAFE. So they are challenging tests. We have athletes stand on one leg and close their eyes, and we time them in that position. We also have them stand on one leg, eyes open, on an unstable surface like the foam that this gentleman is standing on. These aren't tests that we do in the clinic for our patients. These are tests that we would do in the clinic or in the field for athletes specifically, and because of what they can tell us about function and potential performance. So if you think about being on one leg, there's so many aspects of multiple sports where you're on one and you need to maintain your position there. There's certainly times where we don't have good visual sense, right? Where we're either turning our head or our eyes are closed, or where there's glare from the court that might make it more difficult for us to orient with our vision. And we really rely more on our vision than we realize. And so this is an excellent test for that. Single leg standing on a foam surface gives us some indication of how well an athlete might do when their base of support is less stable. If they've stepped on somebody's foot, right? Or they're performing their sport on grass, or on a more unstable surface. So, and I'm getting this message. I'm really sorry that my internet looks like it might be a little bit unstable. So if I've frozen a couple of times, I apologize. And I'll clean it up in the question section. If that has happened, I'll try to move a little bit here as Wendy starts talking. So Wendy's going to get into what we're seeing in terms of muscular fitness results. So as we tested athletes, and a lot of these videos and pictures are coming just from Florida, where we just were looking at the muscle fitness of the athletes there. So I'm going to pass it over to Wendy, who hopefully has a more stable internet right now.
Doesn't matter, that's what you get for being on holiday. It's all good. So thank you, Becca. Thank you for the introduction. Why I am so passionate about the SAFE is because it seems very simplistic when Becca goes through it and she tells you that we are testing these things. They don't look particularly difficult, especially for a demographic like you that is doing amazing things out on the sports field, but they are actually unbelievably diagnostic. And these are very simple things that you can actually do at home, where if you just use your cell phone, took a video of yourself, you could actually go through the stuff like we're going to go through it now. And you could pick up the types of things that you need to actually address. When I arrived in the US, I was very surprised because the first thing that I did was say, you know, can you please point out your older athlete specialists? And I couldn't find any. Becca was probably the only one I could find in the entire country. And it was something that was quite distressing to me because in South Africa, we have very little healthcare. So we have to make sure that we do prevention as opposed to cure. So I have 80-year-olds in South Africa that are flipping Mack truck tires and things like that. And not because that's what they started with, but because that's what they've been doing their whole lives. So we don't discriminate between athletes of different ages. And certainly we try and keep people on the field for as long as possible. And I'm hoping that this information that we give you today is going to help you stay on the field and perform at your best, because please excuse the pun, but second sucks. Nobody likes to perform if we are not doing it brilliantly. So these are the things we like to give you so that you can up your game, because we like to win. And that's just a natural thing for all people. All right. So now I'm having there we go. So if we go back to it, Becca was talking about grip strength, which is the first thing that we actually assess. And most importantly, again, it is not about the hand grip strength. So frighteningly enough, we see more people actually fail the grip strength category than you would believe, and people that are particularly strong. And if you understand this, you know, most people would go and open a jar. If it is really hard to open, you're not going to put it out in front with your hands over here and try and do it. If it's really tough, you're going to bring it all the way in, and you're going to use every friend you can to try and open that jar. And it's the same thing if you think about how grip strength is. It comes all the way from the core, all the way up through the shoulders and out through the hands. So it's actually a very good diagnostic for overall grip strength or overall body strength, not hand grip strength. And as a case in point, this wonderful man, and I'd like to point out that he had a great sense of humor, and I'm very appreciative to him for being the guinea pig. He allowed me to video him and then pull him apart on these types of things. So I'm very grateful to him. If you look at him, you will think, wow, look at that man's guns. He is incredibly strong. He looks like he has a chest and arms that he could probably sideswipe a buffalo. The interesting thing is that at 58 years old and being a power lifter, which is associated with huge amounts of, obviously with muscle strength, you can see that if you look at our table that we have the normals that we have obviously adjudicated for this entire group of athletes, you can see that he's barely making the 1 point. He's only getting 44 kilograms for his grip strength. Now you would think, why the heck is that happening? This man is a power lifter. We shouldn't be doing this. We're going to come back to him, and I will show you the reasons why he is actually not generating the grip strength that he should be, because he should be, if you follow along that 55 to 59-year-old age, he should be getting 52. And that's quite a long way from where he is getting. Remember, we take the strongest of the two hands, and that was his right hand, which was his dominant hand that you see there. So one of the things that always amuses me is when we test gait speed. Most men are very derogatory about gait speed, and it's usually because they are running around behind their wives in the store trying to keep up, and they don't see the diagnostic value of it. Gait speed is hugely important, and the reason is because it always requires power. If you're running, it's like an elastic band or one of those little toys that you wind up and then you just let it go. You need the power to start, but then it kind of keeps itself going. It keeps going with momentum. Whereas if you're walking, you have to power every single step that you take. So even though this test is only over 10 meters, it is very diagnostic for us to look at it and find things that are actually weak or things that we could sort out because of the fact that it requires that huge amount of initial power. You can't cheat on fast gait speed like you can cheat on running. And obviously the big thing here is that if we can improve how fast you walk, we know that we can improve how economically you run. So if we have a look, and we're going to obviously go through what we think is a good case first, that you know what we're looking at, you'll see on the right-hand side of the screen that what I do is that I've broken it down, and you will notice that we are going to look at 4 particular things: whether or not the person's trunk is in neutral, whether their hips are going to move all the way back, whether their knees are absorbing impact as their foot hits the floor, and whether or not they have a really good heel strike to be able to push off. These are important for many reasons, and I will show you why now. This lovely lady, who doesn't want to play for me at the moment. Come on. Oh my goodness, it looks as if the speed is not fast enough to run the videos. Let's try it again. Here we go. So if you watch her, what you'll see is that as she comes past the camera, she's nice and upright. She's not leaning forward, she's not leaning back. Her arms are swinging nicely. You'll see again as she comes past the camera, those hips are extending all the way back. Can you see how they go? They're all the way back. And that's what we want. They equal both sides. And she's walking pretty comfortably. When you see the video start again, I want you to look at the knees, because that is where we are going to adjudicate the impact absorption. And you can see the knees aren't buckling, the muscles are nice and strong. She's hitting the floor, and those are taking the load beautifully. She's pushing off beautifully, and she's doing this pretty well. Now, the reason we are so interested in whether or not those knees are absorbing impact is because of the fact that if you look at a basketball court at the National Senior Games, on day 1, you will see nobody with a brace. By day 5, everybody has a brace, and we look like we have multiple RoboCops on the field. And you all know this, and you're all probably chuckling, but knees take a huge amount of strain as we get older. And the strength of that muscle in front, which is actually called the quadriceps muscle, that is a huge, huge thing for absorbing impact. And if we do not bring that ability back, that's when we get the knee osteoarthritis, which then unfortunately translates into hip osteoarthritis, puts it up into your back, and we land up in big trouble. So the knee is exceptionally important, but then so is that push off. If we cannot push off, then unfortunately we cannot jump. We cannot get the basketball to that hoop without using our arms and our back excessively when our feet let us down. So this is what we're looking for. And if you want to take anything from this presentation, understand that even with these simple tests, we are picking out weaknesses that if you just fix those weaknesses, you can make whatever you do more economical. So think about it this way. A weak muscle is using so much more energy to generate its force to be able to get you to do what you need to do, that unfortunately it will tire. And you know this, if you go and you play at a senior games, you're used to playing maybe 1 or 2 games of pickleball a day, basketball, volleyball, whatever it is. You arrive there and now all of a sudden you're expected to play 9 games in a day. If your muscles are weak, you're going to last at that really good performance for 5, 6 of those games. But then when the crux comes, when it's the really important games, those muscles are tired. They need to be able to rest. And unfortunately, that's when the form starts to slip, because these are very important muscles for making us extremely economical. And that's why we look at them. So the glutes are the butt muscles, in case you're wondering what those are. And those butt muscles, if they're weak, they actually make us lean forward. So we come across and we're actually leaning forward. The other thing that they do is they are supposed to keep our pelvis nice and still. If they don't, then we kind of see a side-to-side chassis as if you are doing a model walk. The quads, which I said are the front of the legs, those are the ones that we need for the impact absorption, and they are hugely important, especially for the cyclist too, especially if you are a pusher. You want to be able to have those good quads. And then the weak calf muscles. If the calf muscles are weak, we are in trouble because those are the ones that actually allow us to push off the floor, and they give us that plyometric ability, the ability to jump. So remember that all of this, we're looking at it because we don't want weakness, because weakness means more energy needs to be used, and the more energy you're using just using a muscle means that you are using less energy to shoot accurately, to perform accurately, to do whatever you need to do. And that's why we target them. So this is a case in point of a lady who is doing the types of things that we don't want her doing. You see her coming past the camera. You'll see in slow-mo now that she is leaning all the way forward. And unfortunately, because she's leaning forward, that means that she cannot push her hips all the way back, as you can see. And as she comes past the table, you're going to notice that she's not particularly good at absorbing that impact at her knees either. And you can see that her toes are not coming off the floor that much. So she's not getting that heel strike, which allows her to push off more effectively. So watch her again. She's leaning forward. She's not pushing her hips all the way back. She's not absorbing the impact, and unfortunately not pushing off the floor. And that means that she has to, and you see at the top of the screen, she's using 14 steps to do that same distance. So she has to walk more steps to be able to keep the same speed. And that's, most people will go, well, that's okay, I'll just walk more steps. Unfortunately, that's not economical. The more steps you walk, the more energy you use, and that means there's less energy for the performance, and we don't like that. Right, now this lady that you'll see on the side, big thing to notice as she walks past, and this lovely lady is an incredibly talented power walker. She is quite short in stature, but I tell you what, I wouldn't want to walk against her. She really can put on the speed. But as you notice, as she walks past, she actually is leaning all the way back. So you can see there's quite a hollow in her back. Now that is a problem because the more we lean back, the more we actually compress the discs in our lower back. And we seriously don't want to do that. So she is actually powering her walk from her lower back because she's absorbing impact beautifully, but she can't extend too well past, and she's got great heel strike. So she's actually compensated, and she's using her back muscles to compensate for not having the strongest glutes. And that is going to land up giving her a lot of back pain. I did speak to her. She already has back pain. So what we do in that case is we strengthen those stomach muscles so that we can get her up against gravity so that she's no longer using her back to power that speed. If you look at the lady now in the next video, she's the typical model walker. You can see that she's going side to side to side, and that is actually a weakness of what we call the glute medius, which are those muscles that sit on the outside of the hips. And if those muscles are weak, you can see how much energy she's using going from side to side. We don't need to do that because we need the energy to be able to go forward, not side to side. That is wasted energy. The other thing that she's doing is that she's really hammering her knees, and you can see that she's not able to push off economically because she's actually changing her biomechanics. Even though she is walking at an incredibly good speed though, she's our fastest walker in this presentation. So when we get to the 5 times sit to stand, please excuse the cartoon, I absolutely love this. Everybody has to be able to get out of a chair. Now that doesn't matter how old you are, that doesn't matter where you are, doesn't matter how tall you are, we have to be able to get out of a chair, whether it's getting out of a chair or getting out of the same height out of a car or scooching along a bench at the pub and getting off the edge of it. We need to be able to do this. So what we do in the SAFE is we actually tell people that we want them to stand up and sit down as fast as they can, 5 times. They're allowed to scooch to the edge, but they must stand up all the way. So we want them to straighten their back all the way, straighten their hips, straighten their knees all the way, and then go back down again until their butt just touches the chair, and then they scooch back up again, and they do that 5 times. So this gives you an opportunity to move around if you're getting a little bit bored. I always think that it is a good thing to actually test this on yourself, because if you do test it on yourself, what you're going to notice is that you are going to be able to pick up where you might need to do a little bit of extra homework. So what I'd like you to do is I'd like you, please, not if you're driving, don't do it if you're driving. And also if you have a chair with wheels on, please make sure that you back it into something. The last thing we need is a head injury because we've now fallen off a chair. So please be safe while you're doing it. So I'm going to start the stopwatch, and remember the instructions. I want you to stand up and I want you to sit down as fast as you can. You are going to stand up all the way, each time straightening the knees, the hip, and the back. And I will run the stopwatch, and I want you to watch the stopwatch and see how long it takes you to be able to do that. Okay, everybody ready? Stopwatch is about to start. Marks, get set, give it horns. Good. Right, so hopefully you remember that and you feel where you had to work and feel if you had to work extra in certain places. The reason I stopped it just short of 10 seconds is because our goal for doing this at the Senior Athlete Fitness exam is 8 seconds. You should be able to do it under that. However, for athletes, and Becca will shout at me about this, but I always want the really good athletes doing it at 4 seconds. And why? Because we want to build in redundancy as we get older. We want to have enough muscle so that we can go and play those 9 games, you know, instead of the 2 games a day. And we want you shooting the lights out on this one. So we want you at around 4 seconds. So if you are above that, don't worry, we will show you how to fix it. Okay, so again, we come back to the lady who's pretty good at doing it. Well, I want you to watch her leg position, and what I mean by a neutral leg position. So her hips, her knees, and her feet should be in line. We make it hard for you. We make you put your legs in those positions, because by doing that, we are actually making sure that you are using the muscles at each of those joints to be able to generate your power. The other thing to do is to watch how her trunk is. She needs to lean a little bit forward to stand up. We're looking for that. We need her to stand all the way up. So that's the hips, the knees, and the back all the way straight. And then we need to watch that she's not hitting down into the chair as she comes down from standing to sitting. We don't want to see a big glute smash into the chair. So watching it, there you go. What is incredible about this lady is you can see how much power she can actually generate. Watch it, watch that knee and the feet and the back. Watch how beautifully that straightens. So she must be a jumper. She definitely does some kind of plyometrics, and it is definitely helping her. She loses it on the last one, so I would have been interested to see if she could do 10 of those. Often that is an issue. Just getting the endurance capacity in. So she did that in 4.13 seconds, and I was very happy with it. Right, so if you look for what I want you to look for in your own, your own sit to stand, on the left-hand side is the good position. That's what we want you to do. This is the position that uses the right mechanics and the least muscle energy to be able to get up and do this. So these are going to be the people that are going to be the fastest. If you look at the guys in the middle, they're going to be leaning too far forward. And the reason that they are doing that in most cases is because their knees are weak or they have painful knees, and they are trying to actually make it easier for their knees. Unfortunately, this makes them use their back muscles to stand up, because if you can't use your leg muscles, you have to use something to get up. So you kind of stay bent like that right until the last minute, and then you try and haul yourself up with your back. If you look at the one all the way to the outside, these are people who don't lean forward enough. And if anybody has done this test and you did it and you fell back into your chair, that was that you were not leaning far enough forward. You didn't put your weight over your feet. And unfortunately now gravity pulls you back and off you go and you hit into the chair. These types of people are going to rely purely on leg muscle to get them up and down against gravity. And that's going to be an issue. Okay, so this is what I want you to watch for, first of all. So our gentleman on the left-hand side, we are looking, remember, at his leg position, his trunk position, and if he stands. So you can see that he is leaning all the way forward over his legs. So he's not in a good trunk position. He's not standing all the way up. You can see his back doesn't straighten all the way up. And he's hammering down into that chair. So there's not much control of those butt muscles as he hits the chair. This man did actually have knee pain, and the reason he was doing that was because of the knee pain. However, even when I put him on a higher chair, he still struggled, which is why I know that he needed to work on those glutes as well. If you look at our next gentleman is amazing. He's 85 years old, and he's doing really well. His legs are in a good position because he corrects them there, because I shouted at him, and there he goes. But what you can see about him, unfortunately, is he is not straightening all the way up. And the reason he's not straightening all the way up is because of the fact that he actually has a weak core. So his glutes are pretty good. He's coming down. There's a little bit of a bounce, but they are particularly strong. And at 85 years old, I'm very proud of him for that. That's incredible. But he trains a lot. So all he needs is that little bit of refinement. Let's get the trunk strong, and he will be able to do this. Right, if you look at our lady on the left-hand side again, you'll notice she's pretty good. She's got everything going for her, except for the fact that, as you see, those knees are coming in. So she is the sister to the lady whose hips were going side to side on the walking video. Her knees are going collapse in and then having to recycle out. So all she would need to do is actually take the muscles that are the glutes on the sides of her hips, and she would need to then strengthen those, and she would be perfect. Otherwise, her form is exceptional. The reason we worry about weakness on the outside of the hips with ladies in particular is because we get a thing called the Tropenteric Hip Syndrome. Some of you might have had it. You get pain on the outside of your hips. You can get a tropenteric bursitis, which is also where the bursa, which is basically a glorified ball of fat that protects the tendons on the outside of the hip, they get inflamed. You can't sleep at night. You can't lie on them. And generally speaking, it's because of the fact that those hips are kind of moving too much, either up and down as you're walking or in and out as you are doing these types of things, and you are annoying that bursa on the outside of the hip. For women, it is critical to keep those muscles on the outside strong. And now my favorite man over here, if you look at him before we start the video, he looks fantastic. He's also got a great pair of guns on him. Let's watch what he can do. So if you watch him, he's falling back into his chair. He's not particularly, he comes forward in the beginning and he's pretty good with where his trunk position is, but he doesn't sustain that. And he hits down pretty hard if you watch him. Now, if you see a man this strong, you are not expecting that he is going to struggle like that. I will let you in on a secret. He does have quite significant knee pain. But what this test actually exposed to him, thank goodness, and obviously we picked it up for him, is that he is a quads dominant man. So he is using only the front of his legs to power everything. So when there is pain and he cannot use the front of his legs, he now has to rely on the muscles that are actually weak. And in his case, the glute muscles, the butt muscles, and his core muscles were actually weak, but it took knee pain for us to be able to identify that. And he was quite surprised, but you know, he's gone home to work on it, and he promised me that I won't have to stab him with a pen the next time I see him. All righty, back to our poor power lifter, who again, I said had a great sense of humor. If you look at his safe screening results, when you look at him from the front, you're looking at this wonderful man with all the muscle. If you look at him from the side, it actually, and we used to joke about this in South Africa, men go to the gym and they just work the front. And then when you see them going the other way, it looks as if somebody's guillotined all the muscle off. Remember, this man was a marathon runner and he needed those lean muscles to run. He was an exceptionally talented athlete. And he was also exceptionally talented when it came to the powerlifting. However, the first thing that I asked him was, had he plateaued and was he struggling now to get better? And he said, yes. And how did you know that? And I said, well, with your mechanics, with the way that you're doing things, if you do not sort those things out, unfortunately, you are not going to be able to get better because you are using too much energy to stand up against gravity that you are not being able to dedicate to the lifting. So you can see there that he struggled a bit with balance. He did struggle with the grip strength, as we said. He did have tight hips. And even though he passed the gait speed and he passed the sit to stand, if I show you how he did that now, you will understand why I was a bit concerned about it. So here he comes on his gait speed. Watch his trunk as he comes past. You'll see it a little bit better now. He's leaning all the way forward. And because he's leaning all the way forward, he cannot push those hips all the way back. His knees are not absorbing impact well. And unfortunately, it is influencing his heel strike. What you will also notice on the next time as he comes past, he is also going from side to side. So he's doing the same thing as the lady in the blue was doing. He's going side to side on his pelvis. So he has weak side of the hips, weak back of the hips, butt muscles. He's got a weak core because he cannot stand up straight. And he also has weak calf muscles because he's battling to push off the floor, although some of that is because he has done all those other things to compensate. So if you have a look now at his sit to stand, You can see that I did not correct him. I didn't make him put his legs close together because I wanted to see what he did. And it confirmed for me that he has weak outside of the hips, because if you push your legs all the way out, that means that you're giving those outside of the hip muscles, which are those glute muscles, mechanical advantage. You can see that he's hitting down, so those glute maxes, the big ones at the back, are not under control. And you can see he's using a huge amount of energy to throw himself up against gravity. So in this man's case, he needed basically global strengthening because he had muscle imbalances. The muscle on the front was too strong. The muscle on the back was almost non-existent. And it was important muscle. It was the glutes, the quads, and all the trunk muscles that we needed to sort out. And he was brilliant. He took everything really well, and we sorted it all out. Alrighty, so what do we do about this? Because it's easy to say, okay, well, I can see that, so now what do I do? And this is the piece that I have to apologize as a healthcare professional for. We just don't know how to look at this demographic. We don't know how to sort anything out. And I'm hoping that this is what we're going to be addressing today. I want you to understand that everybody should be doing resistance training. And for the people who are bulking at that, understand that even just carrying a whole lot of groceries up the stairs to your apartment is going to be resistance training, because it is more than your normal load that you are lifting up against gravity. So we need to concentrate on this. And the reason that we need to concentrate on this is for this very, very important fact. The Grim Reaper is coming to get us. And we thought that what was going to happen is we were going to get older and we were going to be able to sit on the couch and we were not going to have to work that hard. The worst reality of life is that unfortunately what happens is that we have to work harder the older we get to maintain our performance. So if you are the person that has always been to gym, and I applaud you for going in the first place because many people don't, and you're lifting your weights, but you have kept at that same weight for years, and you think that that is maintaining you, unfortunately, it is not. You can do that when you're younger. We don't need to up the intensity when we're younger. We can basically just do what we need to do. However, as we get older, now what we need to do is, as soon as we are used to any kind of weight, we need to challenge the system. We need to get better. Because if you look at my graph over there, and I try and explain this to people all the time, if we don't keep upping that intensity, we are not going to be able to maintain the performance. And that is the sad, bad story about getting older. And the only thing that is bad about getting older, because we also get wiser and wilier. And if we just keep upping that intensity, if we keep making everything that little bit harder, safely, of course, we're going to be able to maintain that intensity or that performance level until they push us into the grave. So how are we going to do that? What do we mean by you need to up that intensity? So the way that I always explain it is you need to be able to do only 8 to 12 repetitions of whatever you choose to do. So these are easy things: running up and down the steps with weights, lunging with weights, doing that sit to stand exercise with weights. But you need to make sure that that weight is heavy enough that you can only do a maximum of 12 repetitions with good form. So you're not using your eyeballs and everything else to help you do it. You are literally staying up against gravity. Everything's in line. You're not straining anything, but you are only able to do 12 repetitions until you fatigue. Then you will rest for 1 to 2 minutes, and the rest is critical for this. Muscles need rest so that they can perform at their best again. And then you should be able to do another 12 repetitions maximum. And you should be aiming for 2 to 3 sets. By the end of that, you should be at what we call failure, meaning you couldn't actually lift that particular thing again in that movement without, one more time. That is how you have to train to be at this kind of intensity. And once you can get to the point where you can do more than 12 reps, increase the weight. So increase it by 5 pounds, whatever you need to do. Women should be starting, if they are not weight trained, they should be starting at about 15 pounds in each hand. Men should be starting at about 25 pounds. But we want you to progressively get more and more and more. And if you find you can't hold it in your hands, then what you do is you put a weight band on your wrist. You put weight bands on your ankles. You get a weighted vest. It doesn't matter where the weight is. It is just what you are pushing up against gravity. And obviously choose something that you can sustain. But if you can do it for 20 reps or 20 minutes, you are not running hard enough from the Grim Reaper, and we need to sort that out. So this is one of my favorite exercises, and we call it a scapular plank. Most people absolutely detest it. And the reason is because of the fact that it is very difficult to do. So I had the same man with those wonderful muscles telling me that he had a core where he could stand and he could do a plank for 13 minutes, as long as I wanted him to do it. I got him into that position, and all I did was I took him and I just shifted his weight forward so that effectively all of his weight was over his shoulder blades and he was just balancing on his toes. And he couldn't do it. 10 seconds and he fell flat on his face. And the reason for that is that the scapula, which is what the shoulder blade that sits at the back, that connects into that core, which connects into the trunk, which connects into the glutes. And to hold yourself in that position, you have to be able to have a scapula that can do that. So the biggest reason he could not do his grip strength was because his core might have been okay, but unfortunately he wasn't feeding that forward into his scapula because his scapula was too weak, his shoulder blade was too weak. So what you do with this exercise is you nudge yourself forward, you hold it there for as long as you can until you feel like you're going to lose it. Then you rock your way back again into the normal plank position. You suck it in, you hold everything, get yourself back in neutral, and then you scoot forward again. And when I started these things, I hate them with a passion. I think I can only do now 35 seconds of staying in that plank and I want to vomit. So it takes a while to get there, but it has a huge impact on your grip strength, your posture, and on your performance. So it's a good one to try. And you should be doing this about 3 times a week. And how many? Probably only about 4 repetitions of whatever you can maintain. So I would do 4 times 35 seconds. And if you can only do 5 seconds, you do 4 times 5 seconds with a minute rest in between. Right, now, one of the exercises I'm going to show you now is going to be the sit to stand as an exercise. And it's a brilliant exercise. And people will always tell me that they cannot do it because of the fact that they have knee pain. So knee pain is a huge reason not to be doing something all the way down. The tall people will tell you that. A chair is too low, they will hurt themselves getting out. Just put a cushion on it. Put something onto it to make the surface higher, and then you go from there. But don't stop there. Everybody needs to be able to get out of a low chair. So you, as the strength and the pain improves, you come down until you are on that standard height step. And this is the exercise that I'm talking about. Okay, so this particular exercise, you're going to be standing on something that is unstable. So in this case, it is a foam balance pad, but you could use a couch cushion. Ask your wife first, just in case she loves that couch cushion. But we want the surface to be unstable. So you can challenge your balance. You're making that weight heavy enough so that you're training your muscle. You are jumping up out of the chair if you can do this, because you only add the unstable surface and the jump if you can do it. Otherwise, you start on the floor without the jump. Okay, and what we're wanting you to do is we want you to do an explosive movement out, land, get your balance, and then count 5 seconds coming down. And the reason that that is important is because of the fact that that ability to control yourself and not hit your glutes into the chair or hit the butt onto the chair is that little piece, that last piece that you have to control slowly down to the chair. Now that is critical for all sport. It's the push to get the pickleball ball. It's the push to get the basketball in. For our golfer, it's that thing that allows you to get that little bit of extra rotation. For our swimmer, it's the one that allows you to kick off the wall. It is critical that you have that. So this is a great exercise to do. And again, we are doing 12 repetitions maximum. If you can do more than 12, you need to add more weight into your hand. This is the touch and pop, and you can all start that today. It's easy enough. Remember, though, that you start without an unstable surface, without jumping, if you find that you cannot control that. All right. So the last thing we just want to touch on quickly is that what I did see a lot of at the Senior Games, which really distressed me, is that we are not understanding that if we want good muscle that's going to get us out of the chair and get us to run fast enough away from the Grim Reaper, that what we really need is we need good, strong muscle. But good, strong muscle needs fuel. And unfortunately, our protein requirements as we get older increase. If you do not keep up with that protein requirement, you are going to get into what we call a catabolic state, which means that your muscle will eat itself to repair itself, because you are not providing enough protein into the system that the body can digest and break down into protein building blocks that the body can then use to repair its own muscle. And you will see that in the endurance trained people. They unfortunately are the people that are very skinny. They'll tell you that they're never hungry, that they have to force themselves to eat. That is a catabolic state. That means that your body has got into a self-preservation mode where it is very, very slowly eating itself. And these are the people that I always say to them, you need to get 2 wallets because you need to put it into your back pocket, because otherwise nobody's going to think that you have butt muscles. Body will eat those muscles, those are the biggest muscles in the body, and those will be the first to go. So please make sure that you are taking in adequate protein, because if you do not, your muscle will weaken and your performance will decline. So what do we always tell athletes? Your own fist size, make sure your own fist size, you're eating it within 1 to 2 hours. You're trying not to eat something that is bad for you. It should have not bad sugar, etc., etc. And it should be something that is palatable. Some people might have to eat the whey proteins, because if you look at this, normal size woman, 65 kilograms, is going to actually have to eat 13 eggs in a day to be able to get to the point where she can sustain her muscle. And for the ladies that think that you're going to eat too much protein and what's going to happen is you're going to bulk yourself up like you were when you were younger, that is not going to happen. You will just have really effective muscle, but you need to sustain it. The last point is have a look down at the bottom. If you want to prevent that catabolic state and prevent the breakdown that the endurance athletes get, you need the equivalent of 17 to 19 and a half eggs a day if you're a 65 kilogram woman. Okay, so have a look, go and see your doctor, go and see your nutritionist, but make sure that your diet is balanced. Don't take anything out, and make sure that you are replacing the protein so that the muscle is spared.
All right, so right now I'm hungry for eggs, but as a quick wrap up to what we're discussing in terms of education, when we were at the games just this past May, we introduced some new educational materials that Wendy and I have created, and a lot of the information that Wendy just presented can be found in our muscle fitness handout. These are going to show up, I believe, in July on NSGA's website. So we've got one handout for each of the categories, and we know we can't put everybody into one, box in terms of what they need and what they need to pay attention to. But these are some of our favorite things related to each of the areas of fitness regarding the SAFE. Okay. So just finally, and we'll hopefully have a few questions to answer before we leave this afternoon. But this was just our sort of tip of the iceberg, talking about muscle fitness, one aspect of those 4 aspects within the SAFE, where we really feel passionately that athletes are probably overlooked, misunderstood, and underserved by those giving them advice and education, areas where we think you can really make a difference if you attend to these and improve your performance. So talking to physical therapists about this, if you have questions, bringing it to your physician, recognizing that they might not quite understand what to do with you, but you can even share some of this information with them that we've presented to help direct their efforts a little bit more, because we're all learning how to better care for older athletes. That is the time that we have this afternoon, and we're hoping that there's some questions that we can clarify, or some things that we've made you think a little bit more about today.
Absolutely. Let me say thank you to both of you. What a fascinating collection of information. And it looked like you guys were having a lot of fun there at the NSGA as well, and ran into some really great people, which is always the case when you get around senior athletes, for sure. So just a couple of comments that I have for myself. I actually, as we were going through the presentation, I tried to do the things that you asked. I did stand on one leg and close my eyes for not as long as I thought I would be able to. I can see that might be an area where I could do a little bit of improvement. The other thing that really caught me off guard, I was not expecting, and you both kind of hinted at this, but Wendy in particular, is that looks can be a little deceiving. I saw that power lifter sit down and I just assumed he would, break the device. And it was interesting to see that while he was certainly strong in certain areas, there was room for improvement in other areas as well. I really appreciated the Scapular Plank. That is not something that I have done before. I'm going to try it. I once again suspect that I will be disappointed in myself. I just have this suspicion, but I'm excited to try that as well. We do actually have a few questions that have come in, and I know that we may not have time to get to every single thing, but one that has been repeated now is there a special diet, specifically keto? We hear a lot about reduce the carbs, up the protein. That's kind of your keto general approach. What's your take on that? Or is there another specific diet, or do you just recommend upping the protein?
So the most important thing about any kind of diet is that the reason diets are great is because unfortunately, moderation doesn't sell. What happens is we all want something extreme. So when I was growing up, there was a grape diet, for example, and everybody ate grapes and then couldn't understand why they're all diabetic by the end of it. But the important thing here is that you have to maximize your nutrition first before you think about doing anything here. So make sure that you're eating a really good proportion of everything. If you want to up your protein because you understand that you are losing that muscle mass, you need to do it after you're exercising, and that's every time after you're exercising. But what you need to understand then is that you don't cut out good carbohydrates to do that. And we're talking about good carbohydrates. So if you want any dietary advice for athletes, cut out the rubbish, cut out the processed sugars, cut out the white breads, the white pastas, the things we love to eat because those are empty calories. Replace them with the good carbohydrates, the vegetables, the legumes, that type of thing. And understand that if you increase the protein, you must increase the water, because the body takes a huge amount of effort to actually break more protein down, and you don't need to shut down your kidneys. So eat in moderation with everything. Keto is great. However, some of us fuel on carbohydrates. I don't get out of bed if I don't have carbohydrates. So understand what you need to participate effectively as an athlete. And if you can't work out exactly what the balances are, then you need to see a sports dietitian, and you need to get them to work out a plan specifically for you. But eat everything. Don't cut anything out.
Awesome. I appreciate that. That sounds like good advice. You alluded to this just a little bit as well. Maybe just expand on it. You talked about getting protein. You used eggs as an example. Obviously, eggs are not the only source of protein. There are legumes and beans. There's animal products from dairy to meat sources and things like that. But I got a little intimidated at the quantity. That's a significant amount of eggs that you were talking about there. You alluded to whey protein or protein powders or shakes. Can you just expand a little bit on that for us?
Okay, so the whey proteins, make sure, first of all, that nothing is added to them. So you just get into the habit of reading those labels, make sure that they are effective versions. The plant whey proteins are usually the best, and you will have to add it to something. So one of the things that amazes me here is in America, nobody talks about fat. We all eat fat all over the world, and we eat good fat, and we're not morbidly obese. So you have to have some fat that goes with that, some good fat. That makes it more palatable. It makes it easier to digest. But unfortunately, you could take the whey protein and you can put it into, so I would put it into 15 tablespoons of double cream yogurt, for example, or teaspoons. And I would put some milk into it and I would drink it that way, because it's very unpalatable to think of eating 13 eggs. So sometimes we've got to cheat a little bit with the things like the whey protein to get the protein we need. But those recommendations that I gave on the screen are actually the international recommendations for older athletes. And I think we underappreciate just how much more protein we need to fuel. But then by the same token, we can't get it in. And we just don't have any information on how to do that. So whey protein is a way to make it more palatable, because it's easier to drink something than it is to eat 13 eggs. But look at what you're doing. Most people will eat carbohydrates. Don't have a sandwich when you're finished because you're a runner and carbohydrates make you feel better and you've got a processed piece of meat on it. Have it with a good lean chicken breast on it so that the protein is good, easily digestible, and quite a big portion of it, that fistful size. And then you'll notice it's better. But we try and eat all our protein at night. Can't do that. Nobody wants to sleep on 2 kilograms of protein at night. Eat it throughout the day. In fact, they're saying 3 to 4 times a day, we should be replacing.
Okay, excellent. In addition to that, just a couple of other additional questions. You talked about a couple of specific exercises that we can all do and work on. The stand up, the weighted stand up on an uneven surface made a lot of sense to me. I'm curious, have you ever heard of an exercise called a Turkish Get Up?
Yep.
Is that a good one? Do you recommend that one, or?
Brilliant. You know, anything that you can actually get yourself into a position that is going to give you redundancy. So now remember that when you play sport, you have to be able to get into positions you haven't even thought of. So one of my worst nightmares is people who go to the gym and then they can do all these leg presses or all these bench presses, and they think that that translates into sport. It doesn't, because there's nothing in sport where all you do is push with your legs or push up in the air. So the exercises that you're talking about, these things give you much more ability. There's a jump, there's a power, there's all of that type of stuff in it. And what they do is they build in the type of stuff that we need to play sport. They're not unidimensional. We need the multidimensional exercises to be able to prepare ourselves for sport.
So for those who are not familiar with the Turkish Get Up, how would you describe what that is?
You can describe it. You describe it. And this is a fascinating thing for me. So please describe it, because I'll tell you how my emphasis differs. Okay, go for it.
So my understanding of a Turkish Get Up is that you have a weight, whatever the weight is, and you lay flat on your back, and then basically you have to get to your feet without putting that weight down on the ground. And there's techniques and different ways to do it, but you're essentially going from a prone position to a standing position, holding a barbell or a gallon of milk or whatever that weight is. Is that your understanding?
So okay. That's exactly what it is. But we are mean in South Africa, and what we do is we give people 3 seconds to get off the floor.
Okay.
We are introducing a power component into that too. So we get them to troubleshoot it. How are you going to do this? And then we give them weights that move. So have you ever seen a sandbag? You know, the sandbag weights? If we give them a stable weight, that's too nice, because now they can actually use it. It's something that is defined and you can get up off the floor. Give them something that moves, a container with, you know, like you said, a gallon jug of water with water in it. And now all of a sudden you've got to learn how to get off the floor when your center of gravity is being challenged. So we love those, okay? And it's a great one to do. It's also excellent as we get older. We need to be able to get off the floor. But how many times do we get off the floor in sport? We fall down in basketball. We fall down in volleyball. It's a great thing to do. And do you want to miss the ball? No. So my older athletes, we used to do that. Get on the floor. Now I'm going to hit this ball to you. You better be able to get up and get it by the time this ball gets here. It's amazing what people can do when they're motivated.
You are mean, Wendy.
Of course, that's how it works.
You saw the pen at the beginning. There were so many athletes threatened with the red pen at the game.
One more question, and this is actually a really good one. This came in. It says, if a doctor who specializes in older athletes is not available, is there another type of doctor that you recommend as a primary care physician for senior athletes?
I might jump in
Do you
here.
want to do this one?
I would say we know that the training that physicians are getting related to older athletes is lacking, right? So, and I will say that even the training that PTs right now are getting is lacking. We're working hard on that, but it's still limited. And so we hear from athletes that say, you know, I got my knee replaced and they stopped my therapy or stopped my rehab. So I couldn't rehab back into tennis. I didn't know how to rehab. They didn't know how to rehab me back into tennis. So I think it's a problem, and there's not a perfect answer, but probably the best default place to start would be to go after a sports medicine doc who is treating younger athletes to start with. Don't put yourself in that category to say, who's treating older adults? Who's really good at older adults? Those people are actually probably not the people that are going to be best. Because the typical older adult is a totally different person than any of us. So if you're keeping your health strong, if you're keeping your fitness, as good as you can, and you happen to have something go on, right? We all do. We're more likely to as we get older. Still going back to those high level practitioners who are working with athletes already. They're more familiar with sport. They're more familiar with the demands of sport. And I think you need a sports medicine doc. This is the hard part, who's really open-minded and who's not ageist, right? So ageism is a real problem in our healthcare system. We're working on that. But if you can, word of mouth, things get around, we figure out who's the least ageist, right? Who's the least arrogant and most able to listen. And if you can get a provider who's ready to listen and say, hey, I get that you're 65, but now I can see what you're doing. And so even though you're not who I expected to walk in the door, I know what I'm doing. I know what you need. I've worked with someone who's 35 who is also an older athlete, right? Once we get past those collegiate athletes, we're in a different realm as our bodies start to age. And I think those sports medicine docs can do it, but you're going to have to find those that are the most open-minded. And I think sometimes bringing to them some of the materials that you have, and taking some time to say, I just need you to listen to me for a minute. This is my typical week, so that they understand who you are. Don't say, well, I know I'm old, so this, right? Don't throw yourself under the bus that way, and make sure that you're giving yourself credit for what you're doing and making sure that your provider hears that before they start working with you, because you don't want them to set you up for not being able to present it, right?
That's awesome. We've had a few comments that have come in. I just want to share them with you because I think they're important and relevant. Number one, interesting information and insights. Thank you. And I'll agree with that. You guys have really covered some great and important things. Another one, love this. I need to have my husband watch it too. For those that are just joining us, we will make this available to rewatch on our website at seniorgames.net. There is one other question. We're running a little bit short on time, but I think it's worth at least spending a second on it. And that is, can these exercises in this program be adapted for folks with disabilities?
Sure.
Absolutely.
All of this type of stuff is, and you think about it, a scapular plank, even somebody that was not able to do it, say, for example, and we don't even have to talk about a disability, but say you've had a hip replacement or a knee replacement, you can still do a scapular plank, because if your core is strong enough, you can start on a higher surface, not all the way down on the floor. So maybe start at table level, put arms onto the table, and get yourself into that position. You can still take yourself all the way forward onto your scapula and start training there. If you are in a wheelchair and you cannot move anything from below the waist, you can still lean all the way forward, put your arms onto something and still work your scapula. In fact, they're even more important that you have a core and a scapula to go with it. So all of this can be adjusted. You just got to try and do it safely. The sit to stand, obviously you couldn't do if you couldn't get up out of a chair. But like I said, for knee pain, make the chair higher. If you've had a hip replacement, make the chair higher to start off with. Knee replacement, make it higher, but make sure that you're challenging yourself all the time.
There's never a functional level where we can't get stronger,
Never.
or can't improve. So we're speaking to one, really niche area here, but when we work with our patients, somebody might be starting from a real, low functional level. We know, we have evidence to show your muscles will still respond. If we just start a little bit slower, and
the weaker you are, the better you respond.
Yeah, you can make great gains.
You start to feel that progress right away.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Well, Wendy and Becca, thank you so much for joining us. Great information, just fascinating. I'm looking forward to rewatching this and picking up some new things for myself as well. But thank you for joining us. We wish you the very best in the things that you're doing. And hopefully we'll run into each other again, maybe at the Huntsman World Senior Games, where you'll be performing some safe testing on our athletes as well.
Excellent. We'd love to. Thank you so much for having us.
Great. Thank you. Have a great day.
Same to you. And we also want to thank you for joining us today. We appreciate you taking time out of your schedules as well. If you enjoyed this program, make sure that you share it with your friends or family. And as I said, we will make this presentation available to rewatch at seniorgames.net. And be sure to check in next month for the upcoming webinar. All the details will be available on our website. That is, once again, seniorgames.net. And until we meet again, get out there and live your best life.
you.